Well, first of all, thank you for taking out some time and meeting with me. This is actually for my English class. And so I'm doing a research paper on what I'm actually majoring in, which is worship and arts.
Okay.
And so right now I'm digging into information just regarding the worship ministry challenges, and then also the victories of, the worship leading. So, and when I say worship, I mean the entire music department. I know there's worship leading and praise and worship and that type of thing, but I'm looking at the music department as a whole in all of most of the churches. So I'm interviewing Professor Silvester Henderson, who's a professor at the Los Medanos College, as well as the College of Alameda, Alameda, California, and also was a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. He's currently the Minister of Music of a mega church, Palma Ceia Baptist Church in Hayward, California, where I also, that's where I actually met him, and he became my mentor, and I've learned so much, and so glad to have opportunity to interview you. So I just have some questions for you, and I'll just jump right in. My first question is, as a music minister of a mega church, what parts of the current ministry job are you most energized? So what makes it?
What makes me the most energized are really the public projects and the community performances, because that's that's kind of like the open house for the church. Mm-hmm. That's when all the good is shown.
Right.
So I'm very energized about the quarterly projects that we've put together, and our performing calendar, ministry calendar, becoming the minister of music of the church. I've been with the church since 1981.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Yes.
And I established a performance calendar that allows for a major community performance and a worship performance every quarter. Okay. So generally it's the youth the first quarter in March, it's the men's chorus the second quarter in June, it's either the entire department workshop or it's the women's ministry in August or September. And then the last quarter, October to December, is the annual community Christmas concert that is really the African American version of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir's concert. And so it has a very historic reputation. And that's those really excite me. Now, the week-to-week work, it does excite me, but not like the projects, because the reason that the projects are so important to me is because it means that the department is constantly active, and the parishioners, there's some aspect of the program that is aiming to give homage to God, as well as show their productivity and their creativity.
Okay.
And it keeps them going. It keeps them connected to the ministry and the congregation, and it allows us to then constantly communicate to the community.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Of course, that's where you're energized, but what about the challenges?
Challenges is basically the biggest challenge in a church, and I'm so glad that you asked me that, Ms. Maxwell, who I love dearly. One of the biggest challenges in the church is realizing that there is a total illogical idea that people have about volunteer organizations. Mm-hmm. When you deal with a church, people assume that because you hear a professional artist sing something, that this is what they could do. And so the music minister or the main CEO of the department, that artistic area, is always in a quandrous state mm-hmm. because you're trying to balance what they can do well by being current, but at the same time learning how to stage their reality, but not speaking about their limitations, because the whole goal of being the administrator is to really uplift those participants in the ministry. So how can you tell them, well, you don't have the skill level to do such and such? And I'm not going to allow that, when these are the same people that work throughout the church to help move your program together financially. And so that probably, out of all of my years, has been my largest challenge, trying to find a way, trying to find a way, I should say, to have a more logical framework to what you can do. And to represent the church. That's not always current.
Yes.
You know, you may go to a Baptist church that's very conservative, and you may have 100 people in there that are very ultra conservative, but they don't have the emotional framework to be able to sing very high energized material.
Yes.
So how can you get them to present themselves well and to be proud of who they are so they can support the ministry, but somehow get this concept out of their ear that they are these professional singers? That's just a huge challenge. That's a big, big challenge. And the way you handle that is through carefully selecting materials, but being a craftsman or a craft woman, being very crafty at how you answer requests. Yeah. Also, at the same time, you have the challenge of trying to encourage the department and the business aspect of the church to support professionals that you hire. And so then how do you support your professionals, whether they be young, whether they be my age, whether they be middle age, at the same time dealing with the fact that they don't necessarily possess the same level of commitment to the ministry. It's a job for them.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a job. Sometimes they're very dedicated, but their dedication is never going to be as much as the main CEO of the department, because they're not as invested as much. This is not their main point of employment. And even if it is, they're coming to just do a task. And so you have the issue of trying to support them, keep a professional relationship with your staff. And you have, in my case, almost 400 volunteers.
Yeah.
And a congregation at one point was close to 6,000.
Yeah.
That was a lot of stress. And so the point is that the church is expecting on a week-to-week basis for you to come out and have this great productivity. Nobody sits in the congregation and says, well, oh, he has his worst tenor section today. All the good tenors are gone. You know what? Oh, all of his leading sopranos are gone. Or you have 80 people in the alto section, but they're all volunteers, and out of the 80, we only have 10 that really can match pitch well. The others are wrapped up in there. So do you then turn around and create a VIP group? No, because then that goes against the ministry where anyone can come, because the church is not an audition site. The church is a site where anyone can come for the ministry. And so it becomes very challenging. My most critical, I would say challenging opportunity has, I would say, let me try to condense it, has primarily been the creating logic around the abilities of the parishioners, the music singers. Two, maintaining a strong revenue support to hire professionals to help you, and to try to find a way to serve as a supervisor, being firm but being fair, but at the same time creating high expectations through limitations. That's a good way of saying it. How do you create very high expectations in frameworks that have many limitations? Because you're part of the business growth structure of it as well. So whether based on the church, everyone will say, well, historically in some, let's say, African American Baptist churches, they may say, well, the non-denominations may say there's too much emphasis on music and not on word. Where the reality is that however you look at it, music is the attraction. Yeah. And the Presbyterian dialogue in their organizations, maybe some 10, 15 years ago, they came up with a document, I don't know the actual name of it, that talked about music is the marketer for the church. Mm-hmm. And a lot of ministries that are Pentecostal based don't want to use these sort of words, but at the end of the day, it boils down to the fact, if you don't have no one in the pews, you can't have no congregation.
That's true.
And you have to have something that's going to draw people to you on a consistent manner. So what happens is that it's a dumping ground, because usually the pastors will dump on the music directors, but the music director is the one that's stuck in the middle. Mm-hmm. The music director is the middle manager of the congregation, because they can't go against the pastor, but the pastor may give them directions that will really, in reality, hurt the music program. But how can they tell their supervisor, no, I'm not going to do this?
Right.
So you have to find, it's a very stressful position. And the goal in learning to work is that if you're able to run a music program with a very, very much so in a very high level congregation, you really develop great skills in not only humanity, but in human negotiation, and you really understand how to work through Christian politics. It's just the ability to interact and to be able to achieve your strategic goals. That's a challenge. Yeah. That's a challenge. So that has been my greatest challenge. I've learned as I've been at my congregation over the years, now my congregation do not ask questions because they have such high respect for me as a person that they go along. But that took many, many years of a lot of pain to get to that point. And most, Miss Maxwell, never stay long enough to get to that point.
Yeah. That's very true, because you've been at Palma Ceia over 30 years.
No, I've been there close to 40.
40 years. Wow.
I've been there since 1981.
Wow.
So this is 1981 to 2021. 40 years.
Wow. So you've been really, clearly, I've seen you've been really successful in managing like a large group. What would you say to someone that has a smaller group? Because you're at a mega church. What about for the smaller churches with smaller music ministries? Like what kind of?
I would say that the dynamics are the same. The responsibilities are less.
Okay.
The dynamics are the same. Let me rephrase it. The responsibilities are the same, but the massive amount of obligations are less.
Okay.
And the expectations may be less. But because you have smaller expectations, that doesn't mean that the quality should be any less. At a smaller church, you may not have to produce something every quarter. You may not have a $300,000 or $400,000 budget you work with. You may not be full time. But generally the smaller ministries, they still have a strategic goal in terms of where they want to go.
Right.
And another challenge is sometimes this has become a huge challenge. You will develop a reputation at the music ministry that's larger than the ministry. And that becomes a great conflict. And so how do you remain humble when because music draws quickly. Right. People are going to flock to hear music more quicker than they are anything, basically. Yeah. Music and sports. And so how do you keep yourself in a humble state, knowing that your voice moves more sometimes than the pastor of the church? Yeah. That becomes really challenging. Okay. And sometimes that creates human discourse between you and the minister. There's nothing you're doing wrong. You're just doing your job.
Yeah.
But if the minister is not very careful, sometimes they can let parishioners get into their head, and it creates challenges. And so I've had that many times throughout my 40 years having changed. Because remember, at my congregation, I've had many pastors.
Yes.
I've gone through the founding pastor. Then I went through another segment where I didn't know who my supervisor was. I had 3 pastors. Then I had 1 pastor. Then I had an interim pastor. Then I had 2 pastors. And now we have another. And so every time I have a pastor, it's like I have to figure out, how can I keep my same level of productivity, but now try to get the person to understand that I am there, the support structure? Because the longer you stay at a position, people just automatically look at you as being part of the foundation of the church. So you're the foundation of the church, but the pastor is a new employee. So you go to the office and request $5,000. You get it. The pastor requests it, they question. All of these things come into play. That is whether the ministry is small or large.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why that's one of the challenges of being very professional in church work, because historically in some congregations, people have not used church work, quote, in the same word as professional work.
Yes. Right. So, and with me working for you, I've learned a lot of professionalism as far as being a worker for the church. And so can you speak a little bit on that? I know you've taught many of us just how to be professional at the church, how to treat it as though it's a regular job.
Well, I think that for me, everything is about 3 elements: preparation, punctuality, and your strategic outcome.
Okay.
Preparation means that it is my expectation that I generally will not tell my employees, what to do, but I want them to become prepared. Mm-hmm. Even in a situation where they are working with a group that do not read music, or they're not formal singers, if it's nothing but having words typed up, that's something, at least to know exactly when you're working with an ensemble and you are covering various vocal parts, that you're very clear in what you're doing.
Yes.
I would say being on time to me is the essence of professional behavior. Okay. Being very, very clear. That's like a big pet peeve of mine.
Yes,
because
I know.
Generally, that's where most people display their lack of professionalism, because the challenge is the employee must realize they're not the ministry. They work for a ministry.
Right.
We get this confused. The ministry is free. But when you work for a ministry, you're not the ministry. You're employed for the ministry.
Right.
And so you are there to support the ministry. To the point is that they've hired you to do a task. Right. Because they don't have internal resources to complete this task. So I think being professional and then really having a strategic goal to understand how what you're doing weekly or how what you're doing quarterly, how does it fit into an overall structure? Mm-hmm. What are some of your goals? When you were director of our youth ministry at the church, you were great. You know, you were very, very strategic. I recall something that I would like to comment and give you homage for. I remember one Sunday in particular, I was kind of stressed because we had a Sunday in particular where nobody hardly showed up for the youth and young adult choir. Yeah. And I was like, okay, Shana, because I did not want to stress out, but I was thinking, okay, we got 300 or 400 people in the church and we got like 3 or 4 people in the choir. What are you going to do? Well, it was brilliant because you had such good skills at rousing people around. You basically turned it into a praise and worship service.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. And so those are the sort of creative things that you have to have, because in a church, people have big days. Everybody show up. But the big days, the bringing out the china, are the big public concerts. Everybody shows up. But the week-to-week work, people wake up on Sunday morning and decide, oh, if my game is playing, I'm not showing up today. I'll send my money. You know what? If I was out with some of my family members earlier that Saturday night, I just don't feel like going today. The first thing they don't think of most of the time is, if I don't show up, this is really going to be really challenge for the music. They don't care about that.
No.
They don't even think about it. It's not even part of their, they don't think I'm the best soprano. I'm the strongest one. We don't have but 5 sopranos, 5 altos. If I'm not there, the section is weaker. You know, some people do, but for the majority of people, they come to church, not that they're not dedicated, but they come to church based around if they have extra time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
They come when there's extra time. You know, I don't have anything to do today. Okay, I'll go to church. Now, people may argue whether that same level of commitment is found in the non-denominational church. I believe it is myself. Having grown up in the holiness church, I believe that the framework of your connection to the power of the pastor is different. But the truth of the matter is, when there are matters that happen in folks' lives, then they're very emotional to come to church. Right. But on a week-to-week basis, it has nothing to do with people loving God. It's just life. Yeah. It's just people living. So how can you remain productive? So my theory has always been one of the ways to stay professional is to always have various stations that you can stop at. Okay. Station 1 is the China Day. That's Station 2 is, let's look at it kind of like the weekly payday, where you can stop and shop. That's the weekday. But now, Station 3 would be the end of the month when you have no money. That's when you don't have, and so. But now the point is that Station 2 and 3 have to still have some look of the China Day. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what you create. And so you have to figure out, so I have materials that I feel, well, let me choose this when I have a bad group. Okay. Let me choose this when I have the China Day. Yeah. Let me choose this when we're kind of in the middle. I take a look, and I have to not be bombarded by the forces of everybody else. Yeah. Because I have to make a decision based on production and what's going to come out. And then I keep a chart, because when you're dealing with church, you're dealing with people that complain, and your choir members don't always like what you do. And you may repeat something, and they may not like that. But think about it, Miss Maxwell. They don't relate their commitment to your availability or your desire to want the department to continue to grow artistically. They don't make the connection. Right. If you don't come to rehearsal and just show up on Sunday morning, then how can we do something that is new and fresh? Right. But then on the other token, someone could say, well, you can restrict them from participating. That's true. But then as your department shrinks, then that's the visual image for the church. And you lose resources. Yeah. And so then that becomes an offense. Are you telling me I can't sing because I missed 2 or 3 rehearsals a month? So, I mean, there's all these different loopholes. So the music minister, a smart music minister, has to do a lot of praying, but they have to be a very committed and organized person, and they're able to handle the China Day, the payday, the poor day.
Right.
That's a layperson's way of saying that they need to be able to navigate when everything is good, when everything is average, and when everything is poor.
Yeah, that's a great concept. Great concept. So now that we're in 2021 and there's a whole new generation of, gospel music has kind of taken a shift. It's gone from church choirs to now more condensed worship teams. And praise and worship has blown up all over the country. And a lot of young people now, a lot of the younger generation, they're very much so into praise and worship. What would you say for a ministry that's trying to attract more young people to their ministry? How would you address that? How would you either make changes or invest more into that type of music? I mean, because it's kind of one of those things. It seems like a lot of the churches are going without. There's no youth really in the church, but that's kind of because there's nothing really in place for them to do, or we're not investing enough into our youth. Can you kind of talk on that?
Yeah, that's that's another way.
I know.
Because we struggle with that. Well, I think there's a couple of ways that I would handle it, that I try to handle it. One, all of my staff is young. So the one thing I do, and I know it probably sounds discriminatory, and I probably shouldn't say it publicly, but I try to hire nothing but young people, or people that are young and young adults. One, because they add a freshness to the department.
Yeah.
Two, I think it's about taking the focus off of the adults per se, and moving the focus through constant language about, as long as you've known me, I've talked about, oh, Miss Maxwell, Miss Shana, I'm so proud of you. I want you to get into college. I want you to do this. So always trying to find a way to partner. And I think thirdly, this is one of the biggest problems, understanding that if a person possesses skills or have a connection, allow them to use their talent. Don't be the old stuffy wuffy person that sits back and gets jealous because a young person may be in touch with something and have the skills. Give them a day. Give them some time. But then now you have another challenge, because just as the seniors monopolize generally your more traditional Protestant-like Christian churches, your young people have to be comfortable to understand that change is a slow process, and every day they live, they're getting one day older. And so it's about being patient. It's about keep going and taking the horse to get the horse to drink some water, and keep trying until you figure it out. I think when you were at Palma Ceia, we did all type of creative things. In addition to the Youth Sunday, you had the hip hop night that worked out well. After you left, we had plays. We started adding youth, praise dancers, performing not just on your quote Youth Sunday.
Right.
Because the whole, we had youth church.
Yeah.
It was, and I know it kind of sounds crazy, but I would start bringing guests to the church that was always young.
Yeah.
So we've created a very Palma Ceia Baptist Church has a great network of young people. They don't have a lot of young people, but because of the way in which God has worked through me, I have really changed the culture of the church, where you have a lot of seniors that want to see young people perform. And you can attest to that.
Yes.
There's a great deal. And so that was a culture that I created But it wasn't always like that.
Yeah.
And so now there's a culture where they want to see young people perform, and they don't mind supporting the ministry. So the first thing that I would say that a church needs to do is to change the baseline character of how they view the young people in the church. Okay. What is their purpose in the ministry? They can't have a backdoor purpose. They have to have a front purpose. And you have to be able to tell the congregation, if you don't like the material, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because they don't like a lot of the stuff you're doing.
Right, because they need their form of worship. They need to be able to identify and be in the presence of God their way. And so that's challenging.
It's a negotiation. It's a give and take.
Yeah,
so I would believe the first three things that a church could do is to constantly begin to talk about the value of their placement. The second thing is to designate clear resources for supporting activities. And thirdly, it is don't micromanage. Allow them to reign and to create, even when it's uncomfortable. Give clear parameters.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it was you when you were in the choir. I think when you asked us if they could wear jeans. I think it was you one day.
Yeah.
About the jeans.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, that was fine. I think I asked that if they were wearing jeans that they not have tennis shoes.
Yeah.
There were some clear parameters.
Right.
I was trying to find a way to be, and it worked out great.
It did.
Because they were comfortable.
Yeah.
And you would average 25 as many as 40s you had in the choir room. You know, you actually had a good group for a very, very long time. You know, and a solid children's choir, babies choir, sunshine choir too.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 to 8. 5 to 8, something like that.
3. It was 3 to 11.
Yeah, something like that. And so to me, it's about those 3 areas. Okay. And you did a great job at it. So thank you. I think that I would advise that to anyone because we had success with that. Now, the larger issue is not the department. The larger issue is there has to be something visual. This has been a painful statement for me to say to my own congregation. They've even gotten upset at me saying this, but it has to be a larger. You can't expect a young person to come to a congregation where when they walk in the church, everybody on the platform looks like their grandmother.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be rude.
Yeah.
But I said that to the church. I said at a leadership meeting we had, I love all of them. But I told them, look, when I started here, I was 21 years old. I'm 60. So I hire and the point I was trying to make was, if a young couple comes into the church and the pastor is 70, and the senior pastor is 60, and the youth pastor is 60, and the person that's doing the prayer, the associate minister, they're 75 and 80. Well, what's the likelihood of them feeling comfortable? It doesn't mean that they don't love the church. They may love the church, but the church is very complicated because it's about the word of God. That's the most essential. But it's also politics, it's also business, and those things involve what is visual. So you got to have somebody on the ministry, this platform, that's young. That's my idea of always having young people behind me. Yeah. That's why everywhere I go, people always support what I do, because everyone in the whole country says he loves young people. Yeah. But I didn't start that today. I started that philosophy 25, 30 years ago. Yeah. And so everything that I do, I'm always promoting what? A young person. That's true. Because that's what I'm concerned about. And so the young people are the one that keeps me current, keeps me energized, and give me resources. Yeah. And then I, in turn, give them love, guidance, finance, and leadership. Yes. So it becomes a great partnership.
Yeah.
But it starts with the leader changing their focus, because, Shana, the leader is supposed to say, well, I've been here and done that.
Mm-hmm.
So the leader is not supposed to find the joy in terms of what they do.
Right.
They're supposed to find the joy in how they promote others to do. That's a critical, that's a critical statement of leadership.
It is.
Leadership is not about what you do. Leadership is about your support to help others do.
That's true. It's true.
So if I can't say anything throughout this whole conversation, to me that is the most essential.
Okay.
To really love when you see other people's excel above yourself.
Mm-hmm.
To don't get all emotional when a young person is able to galvanize 3,000 or 4,000 people and everybody's all excited, and you may do something and it seems like everyone is still. To be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Because that young person is an extension of you.
Right.
So to see it as a family, not see it as a competition.
Right. And that's important. Just the mentorship is so important, especially to me when it comes to music in the church. That's just my personal feeling that a lot of us as young people need the guidance, and a lot of things that you've already have witnessed and learned. There are some things that you have to do and have experience that you can't learn it in a classroom necessarily.
Right.
And so because of mentors like yourself, because you partner with the young people opposed to just telling us what to do, you partner with us and you're open to our ideas and creativity. So that thank you for that, because and I hope to be the same way, to be able to be open and to encourage the young people and give them opportunity to be creative and to show them how to worship God. That's a big thing too. It's not just formatting everything, but you have been like a great mentor in just how you worship God and how you show us how to worship God and be in the presence of God. So,
and you know what? I such appreciate that, Miss Maxwell, because I love you to death, and I really believe that as a culture, as people, and I'm talking about just people in general, not just Black, white, Asian, everybody, people, the world. In order for us to really show real God's love, it's about, we all have a stage where we're born, we imagine, we study, we produce, you support. Yeah. You pass on. You move on.
Yeah.
Now, I'm very emotional about that because I believe that's the journey of life.
Yes, sir.
I really believe that. I really honestly believe that's the journey of life. I believe I'm at a point now where I'm reaping so much that's happened, positive and constructive, basically positive. Yeah. But I'm able to look back now and to watch you and so many of the other young mentees that I've had that's doing great things and doing well. And I'm so excited. Yeah. I'm very, very excited to see, God, what are they going to do? How are they going to handle this situation? And another thing is, very much like a family, I share my mistakes. Yeah. I share mistakes as well. I'll say, you know what, I probably should have handled that differently. Or if I don't openly share the mistake, I would try to guide the young person in such a way that they don't repeat the mistake. Right. And all of this emotion is going to be slightly, the human interaction is going to be the same. The challenge is the commitment. Well, let me phrase it. It's not commitment, but it is the perceived commitment to the ministry may adjust based on the denomination. Okay. Because I believe that people in the Catholic Church are just as committed as the person in a non-denominational church. Yeah. They just have a different emotional framework and need. Right. Like, I know that many in the Catholic Church, they send their money, they tend to sometimes, not always, be more high-level corporate professionals or poor Latino families or in the South, African-American families, and they may not have this desire to go every week. But when there is an expectation when someone in the family dies that their priest is right there. Because they connect.
Yeah.
Even in our ministry. We may have, at one point we had over 6,000 on the roll. We may have 12 to 1,500 still on the roll. And we may have people that send their money and you may see once a quarter. But when they die, they want to still be right there.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the ministry has to be the foundation of love and support.
Yes.
And that's a good way of looking at it. And allow the door to open and people come in and go as they choose.
Yeah.
You just pray and hopefully you have more that's coming in that's going.
Yeah.
But you can't have a stronghold.
Yeah.
You have to give people the choice to make their decisions.
Right. And I think you've shown so much endurance. I mean, sometimes I'm like, how does he do it? But just 40 years of just enduring I think is just amazing. And I commend you on that. And just one more question, because you're also, besides you being a music minister, you've been a professor for many years. And so and I've worked in both environments with you. And so I want you to talk about, if you can, when you're working in a college setting with a gospel choir or any type of choir, and then you come to Palma Ceia in a church choir, how do you approach each differently? Because there's two different groups.
There is an approach.
Yeah.
My approach is very pedagogical and very, very stern. And higher specific outcomes.
Okay.
With the colleges. With the church, it's more an overall presentation.
Yeah.
And the stress is on the employees, and the more gentleness is on the participants.
Yeah. Okay.
So think about that. So the expectations are the same, but the bottom line specifics are going to be different. In a college, I'm going to worry about breath support, vowels, triphthongs, diphthongs, structure, outcomes, how you're phonating through an open space. You know what? Even though you're singing gospel music, it's just like I need the same support as if you were singing classical music. In the church, I'm going to give general conversations. The warm-up may simply be, let's open up with a praise song. That's going to be the same as the warm-up, an official warm-up at a college. Right. To get them going. At a college, I may have very clear seating guidelines. At a church, I have general guidelines, and I'm more specific when I have the China Day.
Yeah.
That's when I put the pressure on the church. When I have the China Day. Right. That's because I need at the China Day, I need them to be able to go and bring their parents and their grandparents and their kids and their family, and for them to look good. Yeah. I need to be able to, I hate to say it, but to stage them well. So then I'm going to be a lot more firmer on them. And I recall when we did our album at Palma Ceia, I think you were president. You wasn't part of the ministry then. Yeah. But I mean, it was massive people. Yeah. Yeah. It was like 4,000 people. And I was firm on that choir, like white on right, with a lot of us, like 300. And I mean, they were burnt, but that's normally how I am every class session and I mean, some of them wanted to get angry, but I didn't care at that point because I had like 300 people, all these musicians, 4,000 people in the audience, 37,000 we're spending, a pastor, and I'm one man, and I had to produce. And so the emotions were not important. But at the end of it, when the product came together, they were like so proud of themselves.
Right.
But I can't put that type of pressure on a church choir every week.
That's true.
In their rehearsals, they have to have more humor.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have more freedom. Sometimes they may come and not really feel like singing that much. You have to be able to stage it. Sometimes you may have things planned and it just doesn't work out. And the fact that they have the thing with the church choir is simply regular interactions.
Yeah.
That's the big deal with the church choir. You have to be coming all the time. Because if you don't, you lose them. It needs to become part of their life pattern. Oh, we got rehearsal on Wednesday night. Oh, girl, I'm not going to get my hair on Wednesday because I go to the ministry on Wednesday. That's how it has to become. So the expectation is the same, but you have to understand that the framework of the abilities are different because you don't have an audition group. But yet, you can stage it in such a way that the end product is pretty much equal. Mm-hmm. In fact, many in the Bay Area, they have loved all of my programs. But even with all of my high-level academic programs, people have hailed the Palma Ceia Church Choir. Mm-hmm. Because when they sing, they're singing, even though things are not specific, there's a different heartfulness felt. Yeah. Because they're a church choir. Right. They're singing for a love of God. Right. They're not singing for a cultural experience. Right. That's correct. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes the church choir in a form of urban music, even with less vocal and music precision, is going to touch the hearts of the parishioners more. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So do I like one more than the next? I like them equal. Yeah. I'm able, as a music minister and as a college and as an official college professor, I'm able to really water my diet on both sides. Yeah. I get the opportunity to have the structured environment, but then I can have the emotional environment here. Right. And so I like that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that. It's a difference. Yeah. There is an emotion that a good church choir can produce from them singing because of their love of God that a school choir can't do. Yeah. It's a difference. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't. When I used to have that at Miss Maxwell, I had that as a huge challenge in my earlier years because it was like I had two wives. I had three, basically. I had a famous church choir. I had a famous university choir at the University of California, Berkeley, the youngest gospel choir. And then I had Los Medanos College. Yeah. And so they were always comparing one another. Yeah, that's true. And that was really hard for me at first because any little bitty thing that I would do, the other would assume. And I would sometimes at my festivals bring them all together. Yeah. But then another thing I learned, and I'm so glad that you're allowing me to share this because I have so many different parts of my life. Yes. I don't get a chance to share some of the earlier struggles. Mm-hmm. I'm dealing with present struggles now. Right. So I recall this. God, I recall that in my earlier years, and I know it sounds crazy, but I never talked about the college wife when I was with the church wife. Mm-hmm. The college wife, I never talked about my life. When I would go to church on Sunday morning, I never mentioned anything about Los Medanos at UC Berkeley. That's true, yeah. You never heard me talk about it. Yeah. Because my emotion I wasn't the professor there. Right. I was their Bible-based music minister. Right. That's what they wanted to see. Uh-huh. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And so you don't integrate. And so I needed to do stuff that was just for them. Mm-hmm. And even though I brought the church to the school, I've never brought the school to the church. That's very true. I've never done that. I'm a witness of that. I know. I've invited the school to the church for them being in the audience. I brought maybe once or twice. Mm-hmm. I brought other schools to the church. Mm-hmm. when we did our joint concert with the California State University Department of Music. But I've never brought mine.
Right.
Because in my role, I have to be the mega leader who loves only them.
Yeah. Wow. Yes.
When all of you were involved and we had that big concert, I needed to celebrate that my pride was the Palma Ceia Baptist Church Department of Music. My pride wasn't UC Berkeley or Los Medanos College. It had nothing to do with it. Now, Los Medanos College came to the event as part of an assignment, but they sat in the audience.
Right.
It was my big church choir. That's all I was concerned about. And so it was like this big famous church choir. So it's completely different. So it's kind of like it's an emotional act because people are very, very territorial. And most don't have the ability, most music ministers in the African American church, or even in other churches as well, I would say, don't have the cross-professional opportunities that I've had.
Yeah, that's very
They don't work. Most people either work at the college or work at the high school or work at the university or work at the church. They don't all do them all at the same time.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So I mean, so it's been a lot. I want to. I don't know if I'm more than glad to give you whatever time you need, but I wanted to give you a final homage, a comment of praise. And I want you to be able to. I hope you're able to share this video. I'm not sure if you're able to with your class or segments of it. But if you are, what I want to say is that I really value you as a professional African American woman and as a mom. And I value you from the standpoint that I've watched you develop and grow into like a lovely flower. And you've always been very consistent with your real love of God and your real love for music work. Even though you have a you have a wonderful personality. One thing that has never changed is your love and commitment and love of ministry work. And so I am very elated to see that you are completing a bachelor's degree in worship and performance arts. Associate's degree.
Yes.
And,
worship and arts.
And worship and arts.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to lead you. I think that's just going to culminate so many of your passions that you've had. And it's going to allow you to now not just do from a standpoint of skill, but to have knowledge behind it. Yes. And it helps you to think more intellectually. Yes. And it helps you to understand how to approach things, because many of the challenges that professionals face or laypersons face or skilled masters face in the church ministry is trying to mix the world of volunteerism with skilled professionals. Yeah. That's very, very tricky. Because in reality, I'm not sure if it was you or another interview that I was in. I said the people who are really in control, and I'm not using that word negatively, but the people that are really at the baseline of really moving the ministry are the volunteers. Yes. And the ones that are being paid, we're the least important ones. Yeah. But we're the ones given the task to shape the volunteers. Yeah. And I'm just so proud of you that you've taken this approach to go beyond your natural talent that God gave you at birth. Thank you. And that you developed, and that now you're cultivating to understand it more from a human, professional, and intellectual capacity. So that helps you develop a greater lexicon. To be able to develop your language skills and thought processes in such a way that when you speak, you're not speaking just about an issue, but you're trying to find a way to address a matter. Like I had someone ask me a complicated question that had many underlying factions or parts to it yesterday. And everyone was responding in this email thread of around 200 people very angry. And what I said was, I just appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Mm-hmm. It stopped the whole thing. Mm. The matter that I was dealing with, because I was able to see that the issue that really came about was that the professional that was frustrated created all of this chaos primarily because of her frustration of not having permanent employment.
Mm. Okay.
And so she wanted permanent employment. So when she found a person who was permanent and she thought it didn't have not followed district policy, this is a college problem. Mm-hmm. She was so angry because it's like, well, I do the work, I'm perfect, I do this. But it was really based out of her frustration. Mm-hmm. That I could see it in her comments. It was her frustration because now this woman has like a doctorate degree and can't hardly find a job.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, then she's frustrated and I get it. And so instead of me feeding the conversation, I just validated her as a human by saying, after reading some of your emails, I appreciate you for sharing your thoughts and perspectives.
Yes.
And that answers a lot. I didn't promise anything. Mm-hmm. I didn't solve the issue. I just validated the professional as a professional. That's it.
Yeah. That's great.
And sometimes I use that as a final word, Miss Maxwell, to say that sometimes is a good thing to use in Christian ministry.
Okay.
To just say, when people come to me and say, what are we going to do on Sunday? What are we going to sing here? I just say, I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
You see me do that a lot. I don't even say I'm going to answer.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to allow this person to dictate what I do. You're going to know what you're going to sing when I start playing it.
Yes.
Right, that's how I deal with it. But when we go out to sing and everybody, what are we going to do? 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 I don't say nothing. Because if I say something, that's going to open up a big dialogue. And anything that I say, anything that I say is going to bring up conversation. Because in the folklore sense, which is a kind way of saying the urban sense community, sometimes people don't always prepare.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of figure out how to make it work in a situation that has no preparation.
Right.
So it's not like you coming with a symphony orchestra and you've had a chance to practice 4 hours every day, 5 days a week for a month. Your pastor may say, we're going over here to sing at 3:30 and half the choir don't show up.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You have to figure it out. And so as you develop a higher level of language for answering situations, the Lord will continue to develop and give you greater wisdom or expand the wisdom that you already have, in the kinder way of saying it.
Bless you.
Expand the wisdom that you already possess to learn how to discern when it's good to be supportive, when it's good to be outspoken, and when it's good to simply say, let's just grab hands and pray. Because sometimes the answer is in silence.
Yeah.
Many times the answer is simply in silence. It's not in, there's no specification, because church work has a lot of cobwebs.
Yeah.
The work becomes entangled over and over and over and over. And this group does this group. It's like the national political scene right now. And your job is to keep everyone together and keep peace so that you can keep the work of the ministry and the work and our love for God going.
Amen.
Those are my last things to you. So I applaud you for all your efforts.
Thank you so much.
And I love you.
I love you. Yes, Southeastern University. I'll be graduating with my associate's degree May 3rd, 2021. Thank you, Lord.
You know what? I'm gonna be there, whether it's online.
Yes, whatever it's going to be.
Whatever it's going to be.
Well, I appreciate you so much, and thank you for taking out the time to do this interview with me. And may God bless you and show favor over your life.
No problem. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.